Somebody in here today, you've been running, striving, stressing, pushing, and still feeling empty. But I came to tell you, there is a place, oh yes, a place where the struggle stops, where the striving ceases, and where your soul finally exhales. It's called the rest of God. And when you enter that rest, you don't just survive, you thrive. You don't just get by, you overflow. You step into the abundant life that Jesus promised. But hear me, rest is not laziness. Rest is not quitting. Rest is trust. And the moment you learn to trust him completely, you will watch doors swing open, burdens fall off, and joy flood in like a river. Oh, I feel something breaking here already. Are you ready to walk into it? Rest is often misunderstood. Many think it means doing nothing, being lazy, or giving up on the grind. But rest in the kingdom of God is not the absence of work. It is the position of faith that says, I trust God to fight my battles. It's a divine pause where you stop leaning on your own strength and start leaning on his. When you step into God's rest, you acknowledge that your human effort has limits, but God's power is limitless. This is why rest is not an activity, it's intentional surrender. You are not quitting, you are repositioning yourself to receive his supernatural intervention. Imagine Moses and the Israelites at the Red Sea. The enemy was behind them and the sea was before them. Their natural response was panic and to run, but God called them to stop, to stand still, and to see the salvation of the Lord. This is rest, not running ahead in your own power, not fighting in your own strength, but standing in faith, trusting God to make a way where there seems to be no way. Rest is where miracles begin because it's where you cease from striving and start to receive. It's a spiritual posture that tells God, I believe you are able. The Bible says in Hebrews that God's people enter his rest by faith. A faith is the bridge between the struggle and the miracle. You don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to see the whole plan. You just need to believe that God's rest is real, and when you step into it, you shift from exhaustion to empowerment. This rest replenishes your soul, renews your mind, and recharges your spirit. It prepares you to walk in the abundance God has already provided, but which you cannot access through weariness or doubt. Rest is also about stewardship. It's about recognizing that your body, mind, and spirit are gifts from God, and if you don't care for them, you cannot operate at the level he's called you to. Rest allows for restoration. It's a spiritual practice of stopping the noise, silencing the chaos, and creating space for God's voice to speak louder than your worries. When you rest, you're not just recovering energy, you're making room for God's wisdom, his peace, and his abundance to flow in your life. This is why Jesus himself invited us to come to him for rest. He said, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. He wasn't inviting us to a nap. He was inviting us into a relationship that transforms our weary souls into fountains of hope and power. To enter this rest, you must believe that God's ways are higher than your ways and that his timing is perfect. When you surrender your plans, your timelines, and your anxieties to him, you align with his divine rhythm. Entering God's rest is an act of obedience. It requires humility because it means admitting that you cannot do it all alone. It's also an act of courage because it takes bold faith to stop striving in a world that demands constant hustle. But make no mistake, this rest does not make you weak, it makes you strong. It is the power source for every abundant life. It's the secret to unlocking your full potential and walking in the destiny God designed for you. Trust is the invisible force that shifts the entire weight of your burdens from your own hands into the capable hands of God. So many times we carry our struggles as if we are the sole warriors in a battle, exhausted and overwhelmed, thinking that if we just try harder, push longer, or plan better, we can overcome. But the truth is, no amount of human effort can replace the peace that comes from trusting God completely. When you entrust your cares, your fears, your future, and your challenges to Him, you step into a realm where divine strength takes over. This is not about passivity or giving up responsibility. It's about surrendering control and embracing God's sovereign power to work on your behalf. Trust is a declaration of confidence in God's character and promises, even when circumstances look bleak. It's choosing to believe that His plans are good, His timing is perfect, and His love never fails. Trust moves you from anxiety to assurance, from fear to faith. When your trust is placed fully in God, you no longer have to carry the heavy load alone. You can lay it down and find rest for your soul. This trust is a spiritual muscle that grows stronger the more you exercise it by stepping out of your comfort zone and letting go of your need to control every outcome. Consider Abraham, who trusted God so deeply that he was willing to sacrifice his son Isaac. That kind of trust is radical, but it illustrates the principle perfectly. When you trust God with everything, even what is most precious, you open the door for miraculous provision. God honored Abraham's faith by providing a ram in place of Isaac, demonstrating that when you release your grip, God's hand is there to catch you and provide abundantly. This story encourages us to let go of what we think we must hold tightly and place everything in God's hands, knowing that He is faithful to sustain us. Trust also transforms your perspective. It shifts your focus from the problem to the problem solver. Instead of fixating on what is going wrong or what you lack, trust helps you see the bigger picture. God's power working behind the scenes, orchestrating circumstances for your good. This shift brings peace that surpasses understanding, guarding your heart and mind against doubt and despair. The more you trust, the more you experience God's presence as a constant source of comfort and strength, enabling you to face challenges with confidence rather than fear. Moreover, trust is the key that unlocks God's promises in your life. Many people pray and ask for blessings, breakthrough, and abundance, but they struggle to receive because their trust is limited or conditional. God's blessings flow freely when your heart is fully surrendered and your faith unwavering. Trust acts like a conduit for God's power to flow through and into your circumstances. It's what activates His word and brings His promises from the realm of possibility into reality. In everyday life, trusting God means choosing to believe Him in the small things and the big things alike. It's handing over your worries about finances, relationships, health, and future to Him daily. It means stopping the frantic hustle and stepping into a posture of calm confidence, knowing that God is working all things together for your good. Trust doesn't make problems disappear instantly, but it does give you the peace and strength to endure and overcome. It redefines your experience of struggle, not as a burden to carry alone, but as a testimony waiting to be born through God's faithful intervention. When you fully trust God, you find a freedom that the world cannot give. You are no longer enslaved by anxiety or overwhelmed by stress. Your hands are free to receive blessings. Your heart is free to love without fear, and your spirit is free to soar in the abundant life God has promised. Trust is the secret weapon that shifts everything. When you hand over your cares to God, you move from weariness to victory, from fear to freedom, from scarcity to abundance. Abundance is not simply about how much you accumulate or the level of success you achieve through sheer ambition. It flows from alignment with God's purpose, His will, and His timing. Many people work tirelessly chasing after wealth, status, or possessions, thinking that abundance is measured by what they can get. But true abundance comes when your heart, mind, and actions are in sync with God's divine plan for your life. When you align yourself with Him, you tap into a supernatural source that transcends natural effort and opens the floodgates of blessing in every area of your life. This alignment is the secret that transforms ordinary living into extraordinary living, where everything you need is supplied according to God's riches in glory. God's abundant life is holistic. It encompasses not only material provision, but also peace, joy, health, purpose, and favor. Alignment means you no longer chase after what the world says defines success. Instead, you pursue what God says is valuable. You surrender your desires and ambitions to Him, allowing His vision to shape your path. This doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent. Rather, you become purposeful and intentional, moving forward with confidence because you are walking in God's direction. Alignment is the foundation for receiving abundance because it positions you to receive what God has already prepared for you. Think about Jesus' life as the perfect example of alignment. He was in complete harmony with the Father's will, and because of that, He walked in power, performed miracles, and lived a life full of purpose and fulfillment. His abundance was not measured by earthly riches, but by the eternal impact He made and the fullness of life He exemplified. When you align with God, you step into that same fullness. A life where provision meets purpose, where blessing meets responsibility, and where every area of your life flourishes according to God's plan. Alignment also involves releasing control and allowing God to reorder your priorities. Sometimes what we think we want or need is not what God has designed for us. When you align yourself with Him, you open your heart to receive correction, guidance, and discipline. This realignment can feel uncomfortable at times, but it is necessary for entering into the abundant life. It prepares you to handle blessings wisely and to walk in humility and gratitude. True abundance is sustainable abundance, and that comes from a heart fully submitted to God's authority. Living in alignment with God also means walking in obedience, even when the path is unclear or the promises seem distant. It's trusting that every step you take in faith brings you closer to the abundant life He has promised. Obedience activates God's blessings. It opens doors that no man can shut. When you say yes to God's leading, you position yourself to receive the overflow that can only come from His hand. This overflow isn't just for your benefit. It's meant to bless others and to advance His kingdom here on earth. Finally, alignment connects you to God's supernatural provision and favor. It invites His grace to multiply what you have and to bring increase in ways you cannot manufacture on your own. It shifts your focus from scarcity to sufficiency and from competition to cooperation with God's plan. When your ambitions are rooted in God's purpose, your life becomes a testament to His goodness and faithfulness. You begin to live abundantly, not just in material wealth, but in love, relationships, spiritual growth, and impact. In essence, abundance flows naturally when you live in alignment with God. It's a divine rhythm that synchronizes your heart with His, your actions with His will, and your faith with His promises. This alignment brings a life of fulfillment, blessing, and overflowing joy that the world cannot understand or imitate. It's the true secret to living abundantly, walking confidently, and resting fully in the rest of God. Peace is not merely the absence of conflict or trouble. It is the gateway to power, the foundation upon which God builds His kingdom in your life. When you experience God's peace, it transcends your circumstances and guards your heart and mind against fear, doubt, and anxiety. This peace is not dependent on what is happening around you. It is a supernatural calm that comes from knowing God is in control. It creates an environment where faith can grow strong, where your mind can focus clearly, and where your spirit can be empowered to move forward boldly. Without peace, power cannot be sustained because turmoil and unrest drain your strength and cloud your judgment. The Bible tells us that Jesus is called the Prince of Peace, and through Him we have access to a peace that surpasses all understanding. This peace is a spiritual weapon, a shield that protects you from the fiery darts of fear and discouragement. When you walk in peace, you are walking in God's favor, and favor is what opens doors, changes situations, and shifts outcomes in your favor. Peace settles your soul so you are not tossed to and fro by every challenge or setback. It roots you firmly in God's promises and gives you the confidence to take risks, to trust His plan, and to persevere when others would give up. Peace also prepares the soil of your heart to receive God's power. Just as a calm sea allows a ship to sail smoothly, a peaceful spirit allows the power of God to flow freely through you. When you are anxious or agitated, it is difficult to hear God's voice or to recognize His guidance. But when you cultivate peace, your spirit is tuned into His frequency and you can discern His direction clearly. This clarity leads to wise decisions, effective actions, and breakthroughs that would not be possible in a state of chaos or confusion. Peace enables you to cooperate with God's power rather than resist it. Moreover, peace is contagious. When you embody God's peace, you become a beacon of hope and stability to those around you. Your calm in the storm encourages others to trust God, and your faith becomes a testimony of His sustaining grace. This peace influences your relationships, your work environment, and your community. It brings unity where there is division and healing where there is hurt. The power of God flows through peaceful hearts, transforming not just individual lives, but entire spheres of influence. Living in peace also means surrendering control to God. It requires letting go of the need to manipulate outcomes or force situations to work in your favor. When you release control, you open the door for God's perfect power to operate without hindrance. This surrender is not weakness, but a bold declaration that you trust God more than your own understanding or effort. It aligns your will with His, creating a harmony that unleashes divine power in your life. Finally, peace is a sign of maturity in your walk with God. It shows that you have learned to rest in His sovereignty and to rely on His strength rather than your own. This maturity produces power to overcome temptation, power to persevere through trials, and power to live the abundant life Jesus promised. Peace and power are inseparable. One flows out of the other. As you cultivate peace in your heart, you unlock the supernatural power needed to walk in victory, to fulfill your purpose, and to live a life marked by God's abundant blessing. Therefore, peace is not just a nice feeling or a temporary relief. It is the essential gateway through which God's power enters your life and transforms your reality. It is the foundation that supports every miracle, every breakthrough, and every step of faith. Without peace, power is unstable and fleeting. But with peace, power becomes a constant force, enabling you to live the abundant life God has prepared for you. When you rest in Him, you rise above everything else, above your fears, your doubts, your past failures, and even your present struggles. Resting in God is a deliberate choice to anchor your identity and security not in the shifting sands of circumstance, but in the unshakable foundation of His love and sovereignty. It means that no matter what storms rage around you, you stand firm because you are rooted in something greater than the chaos. This kind of rest elevates you, lifting you above the noise and distractions that so often pull you down. It frees you from the weight trying to control every detail and from the exhaustion of endless striving, allowing to rise into the fullness of the abundant life that God has promised. This rising is not just about physical or emotional relief. It is a spiritual elevation. When you rest in God, your perspective shifts and you begin to see yourself and your situation through His eyes. You realize that what once seemed like obstacles are opportunities for growth, and that your weaknesses can become strengths through His power. Resting in Him allows you to walk in confidence because your worth and purpose are grounded in His truth, not in your performance or circumstances. It is this rest that empowers you to overcome fear, to break free from cycles of defeat, and to move forward with boldness and faith. The Bible shows us many examples of those who rose above their situations because they trusted in God's rest. David, when faced with giants, did not rely on his own strength, but on the rest that comes from faith in God's protection. Daniel, in the lion's den, found peace and rest that lifted him above fear and danger. Jesus himself often withdrew to places of rest and prayer, rising from those moments renewed and empowered to face whatever lay ahead. These stories remind us that resting in God is a source of supernatural strength, enabling us to rise higher than any challenge. Rest also cultivates a deep sense of security. When you are secure in God's rest, you are not shaken by rejection, failure, or disappointment. You know that your identity is secure in Him, and that gives you the courage to take risks and step into your calling without fear of failure. This security produces a resilience that cannot be broken by external circumstances. It's a steady, unmovable confidence that comes from knowing that God is with you, fighting for you, and working all things together for your good. Rising above everything else through rest means you live above the noise of comparison, competition, and condemnation. It frees you from the burden of trying to prove yourself or earn approval, because you know that God has already accepted and loved you fully. This freedom allows you to focus on what truly matters, walking in purpose, loving others, and enjoying the abundance of life that flows from your relationship with Him. It's a freedom that brings joy, peace, and fulfillment that the world cannot offer or understand. Furthermore, when you rest in God, you open yourself to His supernatural provision and favor. You begin to operate in a realm where blessings flow without struggle, doors open without effort, and opportunities arise that you could never have orchestrated on your own. This rising is a shift from scarcity to abundance, from limitation to possibility. It is a divine elevation that aligns you with God's best and places you on a path of victory and increase. Ultimately, resting in God is a spiritual practice that leads to transformation. It renews your mind, refreshes your soul, and strengthens your spirit. It is the place where you receive God's grace to live abundantly, not just in material wealth, but in love, health, purpose, and joy. When you rest in Him, you rise above challenges, above fear, above defeat, and step boldly into the abundant life that God has promised. This rest is your launching pad to a life of victory, influence, and overflowing blessings.